Hi there, welcome to the channel, welcome back if you're a return viewer. You're watching the Christchurch Review of Books, and I'm Kerry. Now, today I'm quite pained to say I'm going to do a fairly negative book review. I don't find myself doing them too often because I think I'm pretty selective in what I read, but this one was a bit of a disappointment. Just for a bit of backstory, last December I did a video on this one, Better the Blood by Michael Bennett. You can find that linked below and probably at the end of this video if you really want to go back and see that. Now, Better the Blood was an interesting read. In the end, after a few misgivings, I quite enjoyed it, and it kind of said something to me and said something different, I think, although I'm not a great connoisseur of crime and police drama fiction, at least, but it felt something different, at least, and the driving force in it was the character of Hana Westerman, a Auckland, New Zealand police detective who also was a Maori woman, and the kind of conflict between her culture, her past, her heritage and her current job in the police, and what she'd had to do to other Maori people in the police job. And the driving story was it that a young gentleman was taking revenge for a historical atrocity against the Maori people in the 1860s. He was finding the descendants of the people who committed that atrocity and taking revenge, or utu as they call it in that culture. And this kind of book used the serial killer thing as like a framework to kind of investigate the perhaps sometimes hidden history of New Zealand, which the tourist guides don't tell you, the colonialism, the outrages caused against the indigenous people who lived here when the British and other Europeans arrived in the 19th century. And it was a very effective book in doing that. There's plenty of footnotes explaining New Zealand and Maori terms and language and what have you. And there was a kind of sometimes cheesy cop drama kind of hung on that framework, which had some very action movie moments which didn't really sit well with me, but the characters were good and I really wanted to see more of them, and so I picked up his 2024 book. This one came out in 2023, this one was last year, 24. Now this is Return to Blood, the, I suppose, eagerly anticipated sequel to the first book, which continues the story of Hana Westerman, and unfortunately I didn't find it very good. Disappointment. I mean, I liked the other one enough to order the sequel, and as you can see it's in a slightly larger format, so it doesn't match, which is, you know, just the usual thing you get buying books online. Anyway, so Hana Westerman quit the police force after the events of the first book got a little too personal for her, and now she's a private citizen, and she's gone back to her rural seaside town where she and her family came from, and she's hanging out with her dad. I don't think was really mentioned in the first book, but he's an older gentleman who may be suffering from a degenerative memory condition, and she's also hanging out with a lot of her cousins and what have you, who some of them shunned her when she went into the police force. Now, so far so good, but I've just found the gymnastics, mental gymnastics, the story gymnastics that the author went through to keep Hana investigating like a police officer when she wasn't a police officer. She's just a civilian now, but you know, she gets involved in investigations, even breaks into a person's house at one point, and it's a bit like the author wanted to have his cake and eat it too. He wanted her to be a hard-bitten cop still, but not actually in the police force because she was so affected by the events. And I just found that really foolish, maybe, of the author. I mean, I would really like to continue hearing about her adventures or cases in the police force. Maybe you would have to go to a prequel or something for that. Or maybe in the next book, maybe she'll be mysteriously reinstated into the police. Yes, there is going to be a next book, Carved in Blood, I believe it's called, and it comes out this year. But on to this one. So basically the basic plot is Hana has gone back to her small hometown with her family and friends, And her daughter Addison, who is like a shaven-headed activist pop star or something, and her partner or friend, they don't want to be called lovers, a non-binary person who calls himself +1, has come to stay one day with Hana, and Addison ends up digging up a skeleton on the beach. And this leads to a whole lot of introspection in the town and what have you, because another body was found there 20 years before in a similar circumstances. Is there a connection? Is the same person guilty? So this leads to reinvestigation of the old case and the suspicion falling upon a young gentleman who was around at that time and caused a little bit of a fuss with some of the young women in the town. As I said before, the tough part about this book is that Hana is investigating all of this. She finds leads and people and what have you, but she's not actually a cop, so she has to keep crawling back to her cop friend and ex-partners and what have you, and say, hey, I found this out, but I'm not a cop, can you do anything with it? So it's a bit of a mess like that. And I found the main antagonist little bit insulting, a little bit cliche, a little bit cheesy. He's basically a mentally ill man who stayed a fair amount of time in the small town so many years ago, and since left and found a better life, I think being a beekeeper in some type of halfway house. And the police attention on him again causes a relapse or whatever, and he becomes unbalanced. And I found some of the description of mental illness quite insulting as someone who's had something to do with that side of things. He's just a cliche, crazy person, really. They tried to put a little bit more depth into his character, but I just didn't find it convincing. And basically, Hannah's daughter Addison becomes obsessed with the girl whose body she found. She has prophetic type dreams about her, and she hooks up with this dead girl's former boyfriend to find out more. It's all a bit weird, and I think the first book you could get away with the psycho killer or whatever latching himself onto Hannah and her family and wanting to cause them harm, because that's just the type of thing that happens in cop movies or whatever. But sort of happens again in this book, and I just thought it was a bit too contrived, and contrived is really how I feel about this book. It just seemed to be a sequel that was dashed out and contrived to kind of contain some elements of the first book, but it just seems a bit hokey and unbelievable. And the fact that Hannah's family becomes involved with the antagonist again, and there's a hostage situation again, and her family has to help her again, and I just found like, we've done this, we've been this, broadening it out. Some of the minor characters, like Hannah's former police partner Stan, barely gets a walk on this, and he was a fascinating character, a young, lily-white young man who was like the offsider to this hard-bitten Maori cop woman. But of course, in the first one, spoilers, he got blown up by a bomb, so he's kind of wounded. And he's kind of working his way back up to being a cop, working a desk job, and we just don't see much of him. He's in like 2 or 3 scenes, and I thought he could have had a bigger role in the investigation, even though he was desk bound. And likewise, Hannah's former husband, who is a detective in Auckland, just only gets a couple of walk on and off scenes, and there's a reminder of their marriage ups and downs and what have you. And there is a sort of twist ending about who was really responsible for the more recent killing, and that involved a character that was just kind of introduced in this book, and you're supposed to feel some sort of great, I don't know, shock or twinge with the surprise ending, and I just felt nothing. It just felt like, you just introduced this person, what do I care if they're actually a guilty person? Oh no, I probably spoiled it anyway. Anyway, so Return to Blood, not all it could have been. I hope the third one is better. Carved in Blood, it's out this year. I think they're doing a book launch not too far away from me in the town of Akaroa. I'm not sure what that means to do with the plot. I haven't actually read a summary for it recently. I can't remember what's happening in the third book. I hope there's a good reason for Hannah investigating a crime, because in this one she was kind of all over the place, stealing evidence, breaking and entering, with a slight excuse that she works for a private investigator sometime who seems to be being introduced as a new love interest perhaps, but it really doesn't go anywhere. Maybe a lot of this is just set up for the third volume or the ongoing series. There is talk of a TV series as well. Maybe this type of thing is being developed for that purpose. I just felt this book was contrived, slight, and didn't really do justice to the characters that were invented in the first one. So that is Better the Blood by Michael Bennett, probably available around the world, because these books seem to be aimed at an international audience who are curious about New Zealand culture. First book, much better in that respect. This one's kind of cruises on the tails of the first book, really. I'm really not happy to give this a bad review, but it just didn't work for me all that well. It just seemed like silly, cliched and contrived, a misuse of the excellent characters that Bennett created in the first one. Sorry to say that. I haven't done a negative review in quite some time, but that's it. So today, anyway, is Sunday. We are in, I'm going to have to think about it, late March 2025. It's a warm day again. Sun is shining in out the windows that you can't see. Yeah, it is a bit of an emotional roller coaster for me, the various events recently, yet again, health issues and all that type of thing. It's probably stopped me from doing videos like this for a couple of weeks, so I'm glad to be back. Next up will be another book haul video. I didn't think I was going to get any books this month, then I've ended up getting about 4 or 5, so that's something to look forward to, I guess. Alright, we'll leave it there. Have a good day, afternoon, morning, night, whenever you're watching this. We'll see you in the next video. Cheers.